Hello, hello, hello. This is 3D or 2D.com's The 3D Show.
It came from the third dimension.
As always, I'm your host, Adolf Vega, and with me is
James Tate.
Put on your 3D glasses now. 3D glasses not included.
And if you're wondering what the 3Ds are in The 3D Show, well, they stand for discussion, debate, and the news. I will not be talking about
Disney ruined Star Wars.
and or
The base.
or
De Beers.
but we will probably talk about
Avengers.
and
Mario.
I do hope you enjoyed the show. The show, get it?
Okay, welcome to episode 51. So, we don't have that many stories. It's been kind of quiet lately. What do you want to talk about first?
Hey, I'll actually start with the only thing that we did get on our list. I'll start with the news about Jurassic World 2. So, Jurassic World 2, this is the newest news. Jurassic World 2 is going to be more spookier than the other movies, apparently.
Okay, like scary? Like a horror kind of thing, or what?
Yes, they were very, they didn't really talk about it much. They just said that it's going to be more spooky than other films. I don't know how. I mean, are they going to have the reptilians or what?
Well, in a weird way, they've always kind of had a little hint of it because the dinosaurs are kind of scary. You know, they could rip us apart. At least the raptors can and the T-Rexes can. So it's always had that little bit of a tinge of horror in there. So making it more so, I guess that's fine. I'm not against that or for it or whatever.
I guess because they want to be a little bit more edgy.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I guess so. Makes sense. It's not, I mean, if we make it into like a complete, horror movie, they can make that Dino Crisis game, into a movie. I don't know if you remember those games, do you?
I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about.
Back at the late 20th century, Capcom made a franchise called Dino Crisis, and they used the Resident Evil engine, and basically it was like Resident Evil with dinosaurs. So they made a few of those games, and then they gave up on the franchise. So, but it was kind of supposed to be like a horror game on the PlayStation, and dinosaurs instead of zombies, and I think I played one of them, and it was alright. So,
Yeah, well, basically, you're sort of saying, like, the movie Aliens, but it's dinosaurs.
okay. Okay. So, yeah, let's kind of talk about something that kind of happened. So we got a little bit of news for Super Mario Maker for the 3DS. That the official box art came out for it, and it does not. It specifically says the game cannot be played in 3D. Now, first, have you played New Super Mario Brothers 2 on the 3DS by chance? I have, and that is a 3D or a 2D platformer Mario game and has 3D graphics. And the way they did the 3D in New Super Mario Brothers 2 is that the higher up the 3D is in the slider, the more blurry the background became. Because they wanted to give it like a depth of field. And, yeah, it didn't look good. And as like, really? This is how you're gonna do 3D Mario on your 3DS? And, it didn't look good. And I turned it off because like I'd rather have a sharper video, image and frame 2D than have really blurry, ugly background. And it was kind of a shame. So that being said, Mario Maker, it could have looked cool on 3D. Have the different, question mark blocks floating around and all that. But I can imagine why they didn't do that because it takes more processor and it takes a lot more effort to make the levels both in 3D and in 2D. Are you going to have less Goombas on screen because you have to, register it and all the things they throw at the game. So I understand technically why. It's still just a shame that it's not going to have it at all. I guess not having it is better than having that of it, of course, 3D. But it's still kind of a shame that they didn't really, figure it out and, maybe make it a new 3DS exclusive or, but you can kind of tell that they're kind of rushing this to release, coming out the first week of December, and there's, you hear nothing about it until, the last Nintendo Direct. So I really think this is a rush job to try to get it to work one way or another. And very limited. You can't even upload your own levels. So it's like, what's the point of this game? The main thing of Mario Maker was to upload your levels, and to have it on a 3DS, or with 3D would be nice, and, Street Pass would be nice, and you only get a Street Pass, and it's just like, it just seems like a really bad version of the game. It's like, why would you want to get this? Why would you spend another $40 on this? Really have the Wii U. If you don't have the Wii U, it's still a crappy version of it, It just, obviously, it's going to be limited. The Wii U version, you could probably have like 100 Goombas on it or something. And this, maybe they'll limit it down to like 50, They won't tell you that, but it is what it is because the Wii U is a lot more powerful than the 3DS. It's just obvious. So, I don't know. It's understandable, but it's also disappointing too. Like, well, some 2D games look great in 3D. Shantae, is a good example. Mutant Mudds is another good example. Shovel Knight is another good example. Games that are 2D platformers that look really good and it's not great in 3D. And Mario's never gotten there, which is really strange. You would think, they would have a really gorgeous looking 3D, 2D, looking thing, but nope. And that game is bad. I mean, it's not like a terrible Mario, New Mario Brothers 2. It's just really dull because it's all about collecting the coins and you're trying to get 1 million coins and it's just bland level design and it's pretty weak as a Mario game. So, whatever. It's just sad that they're not going to do it at all, So, let's move on. Let's talk about the Transformers movie. So, we haven't really talked about this. So, yeah, the Transformers movies are bad to awful. I think that's a probably a decent way of saying it, I liked the first one and I liked the fourth one. The second one is awful, the third one is okay, and the fourth one is better than the last one, but it's still meh. So at least the last two have, looked great in 3D, and I think they film it in 3D, and it looks really good. It's a stupid movie, it is what it is, but they're making a fifth one, and this one, oh boy, this is going to be called The Last Knight, and it includes King Arthur, like knight, and time travel, and includes Hitler, and people actually gotten upset that apparently like Churchill is going to be in here, like one of his bases is where Hitler is working at, and obviously that's really not at all historically accurate. The English were not at all helping Hitler, and Churchill was a pretty strong leader in England during that World War II. They're trying to say that Winston was working for Hitler. Basically, that's not true. He was a pretty, No, that's not at all. But okay, what does it have to do with King Arthur and Transformers and Hitler? What is going on with this story? It sounds insane. It just, I don't know what's going on.
You can say that this is one of the tales. Yeah, crazy.
They seem desperate to make a movie. They're like, hey, well, let's put in the past. Like, when? I don't know. World War II? Okay. No, let's make it even more past. Let's put it back in the night times with King Arthur. Like, well, King Arthur didn't really exist. Nah, who cares? Let's mix it together. It has not anything.
Well, they want to take place in the past. It's like a mythology, you know?
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. At least from this little bit of story news, you know, at least the last one, I don't know. They're just desperate, I guess, to make some stories out of this and whatever. It just sounds crazy and not at all worthwhile, at least right now. You know, the last one, I gave it a 6 on the website. It was like the third movie I reviewed, and it's just like, it's stupid. I had fun with it, but it's still stupid. You know, and my 6 out of 10 review was considered pretty high end for most reviews at that time. You know, I could enjoy it for what it was, you know, but it's still a stupid franchise. I don't think any of the movies are good. I think the first Transformers movie wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. So it's like, I don't know.
Terrible. It's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just pull the ball was ever that high. But,
I don't know.
well, the next movie.
So we got this Smurfs trailer, and I think it was the third or fourth Smurf movie. And I actually saw this trailer, when I went to go see, a new movie that came out this past week. It's hard to pronounce the movie, but, Mrs. Something or other, Enchanted Peculiar Children or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
What are you talking about?
Alright, on Friday, this past Friday, on the 30th, I went to go see Mrs. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And, they showed off the trailer for this Smurfs movie there. And how they did it was actually pretty fun in the theater. Because this trailer, you know, it starts off, you know, the green screen, and it says, you know, this trailer is ready for everyone. And like, they actually use the green screen, and it's like the 3D, like, they're like punching through the green, and I was like, what's going on? And it's the Smurfs, and it's all animated, digital animated Smurfs movie. And it wasn't much of a trailer, it was just kind of a teaser. But I mean, it's like, well, that makes sense for a Smurfs movie. You know, having the live action Smurfs movies didn't make any sense before, so this is at least something that, you know, fit.
That makes sense.
So how they presented it on the screen was pretty cool, because like, it was like they're popping out of the screen, you know, but it wasn't, you know, it's okay. Do you like the Smurfs at all, James, or nah?
What is it, an 80s?
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're better animated than live action.
When I was a kid, I really liked them. But I mean, I was a kid. I was like 5, 6 years old when I watched the Smurfs, and when I became an adult, I just didn't really care. Just keep watching it. And like, I remember when I was a kid and eating Chinese food restaurants, my little sister or my big sister would tell me to eat the mushrooms because that's where the Smurfs live. And I used to eat the mushrooms because I thought I'd be eating Smurfs, and you know, just little thing like that. And I remember hearing that like the Smurfs if you look back, like the original black and white movie, it's like about communism because like the Smurfs are a communist, village or something, and it gets really political and very strange. And it's like, this is not at all the Smurfs that I saw on TV when I was a kid. But like, it was supposed to be like a commentary on, all the Smurfs are comrades and, they're actually, capitalism is going to save them. And that's the whole real deal with the villain is that he's trying to teach them capitalism. And it's really strange. I don't know if you ever heard of any of that. Have you? Or no?
Yeah, I kind of heard that. I've also heard, instead of, but it's like, it's either communism, but another very popular theory, is that they're Nazis. And, and Bell or the villain is like, they're a typical Jew. Or, I mean, I personally think it's kind of a stretch, a little bit.
Yeah.
But, I've heard those.
It's the original intent is way different from what the actual.
Well, that's what happens when you have the internet,
Yeah, the Disneyized version that we know now is totally different than that. It's really strange. Like Ninja Turtles is a good example where like it was supposed to be like a parody, and it's supposed to be like gritty black and white Ninja Turtles, and then like the '80s version of that. Was a Ninja Turtles that pretty much everyone grew up on, but it was supposed to be this hard edge, violent, parody because how could a turtle be a ninja? Turtles are slow. And,
exactly.
It didn't make any sense. They were making fun of it, and then they made it into like a kid's show, and people forget about that original '80s version or the original Turtles.
And it's like it's kind of interesting because it's like this. Turtles was originally like the reason why it turned into a cartoon is because Mattel or whatever the brand of the company that wanted to make the action figures saw, we could sell these as toys, and so they were like, oh yeah, sure, let's sell them as toys, and then it became a show to promote the action figures.
That's what like a lot of '80s shows were that way. Like Transformers was basically an excuse to sell toys, and and then it still happens today. All those Skylander stuff are basically excuses to sell
They
toys.
call that like Toy Nation or whatever. Like, the show that's meant to based off like to sell a toy.
So, whatever. It's always kind of weird to look back, see where things come from, and see how things are now. And it's interesting.
And to a large degree, there's some very popular movies that are kind of commercials too. I would say that I don't think it's a stretch to say that Star Wars, like they get a lot of money off of merchandise.
Yeah.
They make tons of money off merchandise. So
yeah, I remember my cousin used to have like all the Star Wars toys, and like who are these characters? It's like, oh yeah, that character was in the background. Revenge of the whatever, Return of the Jedi, and he was in the background for like 5 seconds. Like, I don't remember that character. Like, oh yeah, well they made a toy of him. It's like, I don't remember that.
And you want to know what's hilarious about those characters in the background? Is that with and this is kind of a side tangent, but those background characters were given entire stories too. So, like for example, there's an entire story about the Rancor Keeper and like all these other different characters in the background. So it's like, oh yeah, that guy's this name and he did this, or he was doing this during the film. Or something like that. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Interesting. Let's go on to another interesting thing. So I try to, always get international news here and there, just because it's good to get it outside of we're Americans, but anyway, I saw the story about Indian movie studio making the first international 3D movie. I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And they're making a movie about the Kuwait War, and I was like, oh, well, I guess it's okay. Okay, it's interesting to have the war movie that's from their perspective, but I don't really care about war movies and American war movies. So I don't really, it seems kind of like a missed opportunity for me that, I would love to see something from, Indian culture and religion. Some of their stuff is really interesting. How they handle gods and spirituality. They could just make one story of their, spirituality and make that into like some really cool 3D animated movie or something. Or they can make it live action, whatever. And I think it would be really interesting. Is it like Gilgamesh? No, Gilgamesh is like Middle Eastern, but I don't know if it's considered Indian. But like, you know what I mean? Yeah, something like that.
Babylon was around like, you're talking about, Gilgamesh, the Babylonian myth. Yeah, that was in India. So like in Eastern, Middle East, India, around there. So you can have a film like that, have the story of Gilgamesh.
That would be cool. I think that would be interesting. And, other stories, just like, different creations, with their beliefs and creation. And, I think that would be interesting. I'm not at all interested in Kuwait War. I don't really care. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I actually support India doing this. I mean, I have no idea what the frick the Kuwait War was about, but, yeah.
This is before the war in Iraq with the George Bush, and was it the 92 war?
92 war? Oh,
the Gulf, before the Gulf.
No wonder I haven't heard about it. It was in the 90s.
Before your time.
The only war I know about in the 90s was in 96 when they had the eugenics war. That's the only war that I know about that happened in the 90s.
From Star Trek.
I casually said that so that you wouldn't think that it was a Star Trek reference.
Yeah, I caught that. Funny. But yeah, I don't really know that much about Kuwait War. George Bush got into the Gulf War in the 90s, like 91, 92. It was like a year-long war. I think Kuwait was like the year before, or I don't know. I don't really know about history from over there, so I'm not really going to talk about it. But let's move on. So Lion King got a live-action remake confirmed this week by Disney, and the same director as Jungle Book. Now, first, what do you think of Lion King, period? And then what do you think of the live-action version of it?
I mean, I like Lion King, but, it's like a good animated, feature. I mean, a lot of people complain that it ripped off an anime in the 60s, but other than that, I mean, yeah. Okay. Have you ever heard about that?
Yeah, I think the White
Tiger, the Lion, or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, White Lion or something like
it's called
that.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, other than that, it's good. And I'm not really sure they need to remake it, though. Like, why do they need to remake it?
Well, they're remaking everything, so.
But why do they? I don't get it. And plus, is it really live action if everything is CGI? Really?
Okay. That's a good point because, it's all the animals will obviously be CG.
Because that's my complaint about the whole Jungle Book. Like, you can't really call that a live action feature. You know what I mean?
Well, it does have, I guess, jungle locations and such.
Yeah.
But okay, I love The Lion King. I think it's a classic. I think it holds up perfectly. great music, and it was pretty awesome back in the day, and it holds up pretty well. So I would be kind of negative toward it, but I really like the Jungle Book remake that came out this year. I love that movie, and I was not expecting to love it. And so I actually really like that director, and I think this might work out. But it's kind of hard because you're right, though. If it's, at least the Jungle Book has the one human character. The rest were CG, but the entire movie has CG animals in actual locations. It may look weird, you know?
That's what I mean, you know?
Yeah, so how they do that visually is going to be interesting. So we'll see. So we got a confirmation of a villain for Black Panther. Now, do you know who this villain is? Called Man-Ape or something?
I have no idea about this villain, though. I thought it was going to be the claw guy.
I thought so too. That's what they look like they're going to do because they introduced the claw guy from in Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, and like, okay, nope, I guess not.
I mean,
It's going to be,
show up.
I suppose, but Man-Ape is apparently the villain, and, which I don't really know anything about Black Panther, so I don't really know if that's a good pick or not for a villain. And Man-Ape sounds like a really bad, I don't know, it just doesn't sound like a cool villain. Oh, Man-Ape, okay.
He's not calling Man-Bat.
Yeah, it just sounds weird. So, I don't know about that. I don't know. Did you see any Luke Cage yet? They just put that out a couple of days ago on Netflix. I watched the first 2 episodes, and it's okay. Gangster stuff is not really my style. I just never got into it. So, if this is all this is, just gangster stuff, okay. But it's okay. It's not terrible. It's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if I really, connect to it, but it's alright.
Yeah.
Now, I have seen, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with the new Ghost Rider. That's pretty cool. How they're doing that is pretty interesting. We'll see how all that works together. Apparently, they've said that the first 2 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to connect to Doctor Strange somehow. And I don't, obviously we haven't seen Doctor Strange yet, still a month away. But it's kind of interesting if they would have that connection to a movie that comes out in a month. Usually they try to time it really well, and to be like the week before, instead of a month earlier. So, but from what I hear, they are going to make a big deal out of Doctor Strange. They did say that he's going to become an Avenger. He's going to definitely be part of, the next Avengers movie, and everything that he could do with reality and changing things is going to be a big factor moving forward. So that is interesting. Now, I don't know if you've heard some of the little things about the NX lately that's been coming around. Nintendo NX. Have you heard anything about this or no?
So, yeah, basically, I mean, they can do something with that story. I mean, there's a lot of reality stuff that they can do next to. If you're talking, of course, about like the reality gem, right?
Yeah. James, so here's this little bit of news about the NX lately.
No, I have not heard about the NX.
Okay, so the CEO of Ubisoft recently said that he really likes the NX, that he had time with it, he's going to change video games, and that's going to bring back Nintendo to its former glory, and blah, 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 blah. It's just getting people really excited for this thing. It's really driving me crazy because we don't know anything about this. and it's still supposed to come out in 6 months. So, yeah, what do you think of that?
Kind of funny.
It could be any day now. It could be next year. Honestly, at this point, you might as well just, I don't know if they're going to wait, if they're going to have like a press conference, or how are they going to even announce this and get everything ready? Because there's going to be like investors meeting coming up soon with Nintendo. Are they going to announce it that way? And so it's like, okay, it's coming out in March 15th or something. And, apparently March, around that time, there's when the Zelda, Spirit of the Wild, Amiibo coming out. So maybe that's when this will come out at the same time.
And so Spirit of the Wild will be like the swan song of the Wii U.
Yeah, it looks like it. I think I read that also that in Europe, they're going to stop producing them. And if anyone asks for a new one, they won't make them anymore. So if you don't, any ones that are available right now, you can just buy it, but they're not going to make any more. So that's really bad when you think of it, when they're not making production anymore. They're just giving up and like, yeah, whatever's out there is out there. Move on,
It's unfortunate.
So, it really shows that Nintendo is just letting the Wii U die and not even trying anymore with that thing. And it's sad. It's a really great system.
Well, it's kind of sad because like the entire year of 2016 is just about them giving up.
3DS got some life in it, but just barely, And we don't know anything about this Super NX. I'm starting to get annoyed by it. Is it real or is it just like Nintendo trolling everyone? So
Yeah.
we did get a little bit of news on the NES Mini. I don't know if you heard about the updates on that. That apparently it's going to have 3 different modes when you play a game. It's going to have like the regular CRT mode, so that way it looks like you're playing an old school TV. It has like a pixel perfect mode, so it looks really sharp and vivid. People that have played with the new one, this Mini, says the Virtual Console games look really sharp and good. It looks better than the Wii U Virtual Console and the Wii Virtual Console. And that you have 4 save states that you could save, so that way you could, if you're playing, you save multiple times at multiple locations and then like lock your saves and, it's going to be a pretty cool little package. It still seems like it's not really giving, retailers any information, so you can't like pre-order it really. I think Amazon has some pre-orders for it, but I don't know. It's not like official. You would think this would be everywhere. Like you would think Nintendo would be putting this on Walgreens and every Walmart. You could put this on next to like the candy aisle. For people to get and they're walking out of the store.
Yeah.
So let's wrap up here with a little bit of kind of off topic with Nintendo 64. About 20 years ago this week, it came out, and Nintendo 64 was considered basically the first real 3D home console. So there's some 3D games on the PlayStation, but it was like everything was 3D on the 64. It wasn't stereoscopic 3D, but it was like 3D environments, 3D character models, polygon-based graphics instead of, vector graphics or sprite graphics. And how much information do you even have on the 64? Did you get to play those? I don't know.
I played a couple of them, mostly ports, but thing is that I realize, and I think that everyone who looks back knows that the 64 was revolutionary. really. Games like Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time really were like very, very impressive games. Like the technology.
And like it was the first time I ever played a game that had a camera. That I had to think about with perspective of where I was in that place of that level. And everything else was always automatically there, and I just knew go left or right or up or down, and that was it. I didn't get a chance to, if I move the camera angle, a camera angle is like stuff for directors and movies. It's not a video game thing, and it just was really hard to grasp that at first. And that, the analog stick is, amazing, technology that Nintendo didn't invent, but they made perfected. And, every system has an analog stick now. Or before, it was on any system, Eventually the PlayStation came out with the DualShock with 2 sticks, but, I mean, at the time, it was a new thing, and introduced Rumble Pack. Every system has Rumble Pack now, except for the 3DS, and, the 64 was like the last time Nintendo had cutting edge hardware. I don't know if you remember this. The 64, outside of the cartridge base, it was more powerful than the PlayStation in every single way. Way more powerful than the Saturn. It could do so much more. The only thing that held it back was the stupid cartridges. Nintendo refused to go onto the CDs then, because they thought the loading was really bad, which, in fairness, the loading was really bad back then. It was like 5 minutes loading, which I can't imagine for you would have a tolerance for that, because you didn't grow up on that. So if a game took 5 minutes to load, would that just be unbearable for you, James, or no?
That would like drive me crazy, most likely. But I've actually played old games like
that. And like, 4 players, was something really awesome back in the day. It was split the screen in 4, and you have all these first-person games on the N64. GoldenEye was amazing back in the day. I played that with my friends all night long, and I just love that thing. I never played first-person games before. Then, Doom was around, but I wasn't, it's only for PC. You really didn't get to play it anywhere else. And then Doom 64 came around, and Turok, and, Mario Kart forever changed after the 64, because, like, Mario Kart and Super Nintendo, it was 3D per se, but you didn't really have hills and valleys and, obstacles like that. It was just, a flat terrain that, and, I got into Mario Kart because of the 64 game, and Super Mario 64, the level design was really cool. It was kind of strange because you had invisible walls, so like, you thought you'd go over there, but you really can't. But how they just, Arcade Time really got to be targeting, which is pretty much a common thing now. Every game has some kind of way to lock on to your enemy. And, I remember being so excited for the Majora's Mask and the 4 megabytes of extra RAM cartridge that you had to install. 4 megabytes, James. I know it's like nothing to you, but for back in the day, that was pretty impressive.
Not even a gigabyte.
Yeah, right now the iPhone 7 has 4 gigs of RAM, and back then 4 megabytes.
It's kind of funny how that happened.
Yeah, within 20 years, everything's doubled. So, right now, in 2036, we'll be talking about gigabytes instead of tetrabytes or petabytes. Anyway, Well, Google checks his actual number, James. I don't know if you knew that.
I know. It's like 100 of 100 or something.
So, yeah. But yeah, N64 was a pretty awesome system back in the day. The one thing that really was terrible, James, which I think now that the Wii U has kind of gone in the same tracks as the N64 did, where there was a huge amount of time between releases. I mean, like 6, 8, 9 months between games. It's just like, if you don't like this one game coming out, tough. You get nothing. I'm just like, man, there's just nothing out there. And it has very few third-party games, but, it was pretty cool. I love the...
Well, let's just say that when they were good, they were really good.
Oh, yeah. When they were good, they were amazing. Like, they drew,
Mario Kart 64.
The battle mode in that is still the best battle mode in any Mario Kart game. So...
Stupid how everything was in 64.
Oh, that was a thing back in the day, James. Before that, everything was Super. On the Super Nintendo, Super Metroid, Super Mario World,
Zelda 3D.
It just went on
it
like
wasn't
that.
for every game now. It wasn't for every game. Like Zelda, Ocarina of Time wasn't called Zelda 64.
Star Fox is Star Fox 64.
Star Fox 64, Mario 64, Mario Kart 64. It's kind of stupid.
So, and there's third-party games too. That were called 64.
Really?
And oh yeah, it was just something they did. It was just Doom 64. It's not really the 64th Doom, obviously.
Yeah, or I know. Castlevania 64.
Yeah, Donkey Kong 64, Quest 64. So James, the Quest 64, I don't know if you remember this. There was no Final Fantasy game because Final Fantasy 7 went to PlayStation because it needed a CD drive. So they made a game called Quest 64, and it was an RPG, and it sucked. It was pretty bad back in the day. And it used to be called the Ultra 64, and then the Nintendo was worried about, I think it was Panasonic or something, had an Ultra Drive or something. So they're like, oh, we don't want to get frustrated with that, so we won't have that. But the Jaguar was also a 64-bit system, and back in those days, the bits, everyone knew how many bits your system had because that's important, Because the Super Nintendo was 16 bits of power, and Genesis was 15, and then
they have the Mega Drive system.
Yeah, a Mega Drive was 8, I think, or something. And then the Saturn was 32-bit system, and then same thing with PlayStation 32-bit, and so the 64-bit, man, it was something else. And it's hard to go back. And then some of the 64 games were revolutionary, but they don't hold up visually anymore because
No, they don't.
the late 90s, the TVs are really different from the HD TVs we have now, and they don't have decent textures, and everything looks blocky and blurry and nasty looking frame rates, and it doesn't hold up in that regard. Some of the games that have been remade look really good now. There was the recent GoldenEye remake, and Mario 64 has been remade on the DS, and Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask on 3DS.
Yeah.
But 64, oh, it had the 3 prongs too. Oh,
Yeah.
the 3-prong controller. That was a weird thing. Or people are like, I don't understand. It's like, no, you hold it in the middle when it's a 3D game. You hold it on the side when it's a 2D game. They're like, what? It's like, but there's like not that many 2D games anyway, so it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
And like Mario Party, I don't know if you remember the Mario Party controversy back then. So this is all before you were born, right, James?
Well, when was it?
96?
96. No, that was almost exactly.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but you weren't, you were a baby and you weren't really aware of everything that's going on.
Well, it doesn't matter because I wouldn't be aware.
So yeah, like Mario Party, they had all these mini games where you're supposed to spin the controller around the control stick, and how the control stick was on the 64, it had rings on it, so that way your finger would get onto the control stick, and if you're spinning it really, really fast, it actually caused damage to your fingers.
Oh my god.
And like Nintendo started getting sued, and like they had to actually like make gloves for people so that they could play a game because it was supposed to be you're supposed to spin the circle, the thing really, really fast. If you do it, it just tear up your skin. And I never really got into the Mario Party games, but that was like one of the things that was just crazy. And they also had the disk drive in Japan. This drive is kind of weird. The 64 DD is like a disk drive at the very bottom of the system that you put in discs into. And like, a lot of the stuff that they had ideas for back then have become reality now. Where like, the idea was that it was like an ongoing living world where like back in the day, in 64 days, if you killed something, they would have to disappear because, they don't want the computer there, but like now you can kill something and it'll just stay there, or you could look at the environment and it will change the environment and it will just stay affected there. You could chop down that tree and the tree will stay chopped down. It won't just come back. And those ideas were kind of originated back then, and they never released the 64 disk drive in America or Europe. Japan the only thing, and like a very few games actually did have it. Like, I think Animal Crossing, I think there was like a game called Dachshund the Giant where you can control this giant creature, and it's like a god game, and it never came out over here. But, it was really interesting. It's one of those franchises that got kind of lost in the shuffle.
Kind of lost in time.
And they never really, they had like a sequel to it, but they never had anything else. But like, it was a whole different era.
Dachshund the Giant?
Dachshund the Giant.
Dachshund the Giant? That's a weird name.
Yeah, and you say it's like a yellow, really tall creature, and you had you're on different islands, and you could control when the people were eating, and I don't know, it was a really strange, out there god game for that time, and it was the last real cartridge-based system for the, consoles. After that, everything was CD and DVD, So, if the NX is a cartridge-based, then, which we're thinking it might be a different kind of cartridge, not CD.
Okay, so, and it was the reason why it wasn't released here was because it was released on the 64 DVD. The double B GameCube, not GameCube, Nintendo 64 adapter. It was like an add-on thing, right?
Yeah. And you needed the expansion pack, and, there was just a lot of interesting ideas there. And
it was never released in the U.S.
Never, ever. But I mean, a lot of Nintendo systems have these extra things that never released in the U.S., there was like a thing to teach you how to make looming, on the NES and make your own, cloth and stuff and whatever. It never came out here. I remember there was like a really cool Tetris game on the 64 called Tetris Sphere, and like it was like a 3D sphere where you have to move the Tetramino blocks and like stack them in a way to make it look good. And it was really cool concept. There wasn't that many actual third-party games. There was some. There was a game, you might like this, James, called Trace Fighter 63 and a third. It wasn't 64. And, it was just different claymation models fighting each other. So, yeah, it was pretty popular back in the day. It was a pretty huge hit, and it's 20 years ago. For me, that feels like forever ago. That was back when I was in high school, about to graduate, or about to get started, and, how many times I was up in the middle of the night playing GoldenEye, playing, and it was just like, had this playing games, I don't know if you remember, where we had proximity mines, and the proximity mines, whenever you walk by it, it'll explode, and you'll kill the characters as you're there. And eventually we got so good at the map games that we knew where your spawn points were, so that way you would die from the proximity mines, and then you come back to life and die immediately. And then you just see like an infinite loop of death until all of the mines are dead, because we know where you're going to come back to life. This is like, 5 spawn points in the map. And it was ridiculous explosion after explosion and death after death. And, GoldenEye has a really awesome game. And it's, a little bit ugly and slow now to go back and play, but it's a pretty fun game. If you ever had a chance, it'd be the kind of game that I'd like you to play and see how things were back in the day, before everything, first person shooters were everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 South Park games on 64.
Yeah, there were.
Oh man. And like one of them was like a quiz game, one of them was like an actual game where like you're in first person and you're trying to, shoot the characters. And I remember I rented that from Blockbuster, and I got to the very end and I couldn't beat it, and I had to get the code to be invincible. And even with the code to be invincible, I couldn't beat it. And I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with me? But yeah, 20 years ago, and, gaming hasn't been the same since, Every,
I mean, Nintendo really is like the first to the party.
yeah. They really, it really stepped it up. I mean, the PlayStation did have 10-year 3D games. It's not take that away from PlayStation. But the N64, it was the bread and butter with 3D games. It was like, everything was there with a 3D game. Where maybe majority of the stuff on PlayStation was 3D. But it, the 64 was just, that was it. That was the hook, and they're gonna get it done. And, it's a lot of good memories back in the day. And I really did like the 64. And, it was so hard to imagine playing games in 3D. And it wasn't like Virtual Boy 3D either, because that came out like a year before. Real gameplay 3D. And it was cool stuff.
Alright, so that's going to wrap up this podcast.
Remember to like, comment, favorite, subscribe, love, whatever. Heart it, do something.
3D or 2D.com can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and SoundCloud. And if you want to send us email, our email address is email3d or 2d at gmail.com. And thank you again for listening. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.